Welcome in everyone to another special episode of FPC NFL Sunday, and we're gonna really come up with something else to call this because it's gonna get really confusing during the off season when we continue to call this Sunday, and we're broadcasting on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and today happens to be a Thursday. But this is obviously right in the middle of NFL free agency. It's been rocking and rolling for 3 days now, and if you can tell, neither myself nor Braden have slept over the last couple of days and have been living staring at a computer screen. So it is nice to get here in front of the camera and actually talk to a human being, Braden, because there is some pretty big news outside of just the regular free agent signings that we've seen so far. And obviously that is the trade of Davante Adams from the Packers to the I mean, everyone's getting traded or moved to the AFC West, but I got to say the Raiders are making some nice moves. So
Yeah, it's really interesting to see kind of the reports out there. I'm sure we'll maybe get to that more of just kind of what Adams maybe was feeling towards Green Bay. So it really feels like he wanted to kind of leave and gets to go back with his college quarterback and Derek Carr. And like Terry of Full Press Raiders said, I mean, there's really not a lot of excuses now. Some of these moves that Vegas has made already. I know it's in a tough division, but now he's kind of got a lot more in front of him than he's ever really had before.
I mean, I think you're selling the division a little short here. I mean, it's a tough. I mean, we're talking about a potentially historically tough division. This is like the NFC East, but actually good. You know, we've
Right.
seen the NFC East be competitive for years and years and years, and everyone's like, "Oh, who's going to win the NFC East? Who's going to win the NFC East?" Well, I don't know. Whatever team's the least bad. In this case, I mean, you have four teams that have four franchise quarterbacks, and I don't think there's any debate about it. I mean, obviously, you know, you can debate who's better than who or who's the best, but you have four teams with four franchise quarterbacks, and I'm pretty sure every one of them has elite talent at every other position on their team: defense, offense, special teams. It's going to be absolutely incredible. And look, you know, we're talking about the Raiders right now, obviously, because they just swung that deal for Davante Adams. But you know, they all also, excuse me, brought in Chandler Jones, which is going to be
Hmm.
a huge boost for that defense. So very quickly, the Josh McDaniels regime in Las Vegas is trying to quickly undo a lot of the mistakes over the last couple years. And if you're a Raiders fan, I'd be pretty happy about this. Um, from the Packers' perspective, and you kind of mentioned it already, Braden. Um, the word is the Packers were willing to match the contract that Davante Adams is going to receive from the Raiders. And if you actually have that in front of you, you might want to bail me out on this one because I don't have those numbers in front of me. But basically, yeah, he was offered or was going to be offered the same contract. He just wanted to leave. And, you know, for whatever reason, who knows, like you said, going back and playing with his college, you know, quarterback, just, you know, maybe just wanting to get out of the mess that is Green Bay. I mean, let's face it. I mean, there's a lot of good things about Green Bay if you're a Packers fan. There's also a lot of drama year in and year out, and maybe
Hmm.
Davante Adams just wanted a fresh start. So I'll be interested to see what more details we learn of this because I got to imagine that prior to Aaron Rodgers putting pen to paper, he had to know that this was a real possibility that Davante Adams wasn't going to be here.
Yeah, and I think that kind of even stems back to maybe last summer a little bit when the report kind of came out that neither side was really close on contract negotiations. So I think there's a little bit of Aaron that maybe knew maybe he had a little bit more pull this year on maybe bringing in a new fresh face. I mean, even though Adams is probably the best receiver in the league to me, no question. I think it's maybe a time where Rodgers is going to get his way a little more. But as far as Adams not wanting to go back to Green Bay, I think it also just kind of stems from just what we've seen of Green Bay's results in recent years. Like you said, I mean, kind of been one and done too many times. I mean, even the early part of the 2010s, they had a lot of years where they got that number one seed and did nothing with it. So even though we just kind of talked about how tough the AFC West is going to be, maybe he thinks there's always a chance that the grass is kind of greener on the other side here.
Yeah, and look. I mean, Just the idea of this AFC West, and we're gonna hear jokes all about it. It's gonna be, oh, maybe they should just have their own playoff, or maybe they should just, a big battle royale. Maybe we can figure out somehow, some way to create rules in which four teams can compete in one game. Yeah, I don't. It's going to be pretty wild. You talked about the defensive talent on these teams. You talked
Mm.
about the offensive talent. I mean, a couple of days ago, I would have said Kansas City's clearly still the kings of this division. But, look, I have no earthly idea what's going to happen. I don't think, I think Kansas City could still be, and you have a better view of them than I do. Um, Kansas City still could be the best team in this division, but I don't. I think they very clearly improved the least. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I think their holes are definitely. I don't want to say maybe larger, but I think the needs that they still have, there's a lot of positions that they still have to fill here this offseason. I think compared to a lot of other teams, I think teams have kind of filled their biggest needs or re-signed players that are basically number one at their position or 1B on their team. So I think you look at Kansas City, it's kind of just all the moves these other teams made are really kind of attacking where they're at their weakest right now. You talk about just all the pass rushers in this division now with Chandler Jones and Randy Gregory now in Denver. Right tackle looks really suspicious for Kansas City, and I think that it's not going to be easy to land any of the right tackles that are still out there with their cap situation. So I think it could be a draft pick or maybe back to Andrew Wiley there. But I think their biggest kind of weaknesses right now in Kansas City are where all these other teams got their best here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was a very clear and concerted effort to attack, the best team's weakness. Now, again, to solidify your pass rush and your ability to get after the quarterback, I mean, that's at the top of the list of every team's defensive strategy because that's how you beat every quarterback. That's how you beat elite quarterbacks. Now, no, you can't beat elite quarterbacks rushing six players, but you have to have guys that can beat matchups and beat, double teams regularly to affect these impact quarterbacks. And I said it on our FPC Radio Live morning show. I bet you Patrick Mahomes, whoever pick whatever order, it's probably be Russell Wilson number one. But Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson might be the two most sacked quarterbacks in the league next year. And I'm not saying that jokingly. I think that might be a very distinct possibility. And it's, again, it's partly due to their play style. I mean,
Right.
Russell Wilson, I think he holds on to the ball far too long, tries to play a lot of hero ball, and we that's where we get those Tyler Lockett moonshot highlights that we're so accustomed to seeing. But a lot of that is a product of Russell rolling out, running around. Well, that also opens you up to get sacked more. We saw him get sacked 40 times a couple seasons ago. So I mean, he's led the league in sacks. Patrick Mahomes is middle of the pack when it comes to sack percentage. But to his credit, and Chiefs fans, settle down. I'm going to give him a compliment here. I think he got a lot better at just slowing the game down in the second half of the season. Now, the playoff game, notwithstanding, that was
Yeah.
obviously it's kind of a bad game overall for the entire team. But I thought over the second half of the season, he did less looking for that just big home run shot and trying to play. I think he tried to settle things down a lot more. So, hopefully for Kansas City and hopefully for him, they improve this. But I mean, even if he does, I mean, you're talking about relentless, pass rush 6 games a year. I mean, you don't
Yeah.
get a break against any of these teams. I mean, you go and play Oakland. You have Chandler Jones. You have Max Crosby, who just signed a big extension. Then it's like, okay, oh, all right, let's go to Los Angeles. Let's go play the Chargers. All right, who do the Chargers have? Oh, they have Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. Oh, and if you happen to escape the pass rush and huck the ball downfield, well, they have the guy that's basically Tavon Diggs, but can actually play cover cornerback, in J.C. Jackson. So not only will he pick the ball off, he'll prevent you from completing passes, and he's not going to get burnt deep. So, I mean, again, this is just a murderer's row of just elite defenses or just elite teams in general that, I hate to say it, but I feel like these teams are just going to beat the hell out of each other. And by the end of the year, it's not going to be like you're not going to get a team in this division that's going to win 13 games. I don't think.
Right.
I think 12 games will win this division, but that's more of a, you might see 11, 12 wins. Like you're not going to see a Kansas City 14-3 team. I just, this division is too good for that to happen. If they don't lose directly to a division opponent, it's going to be a loss to another team by virtue of just, you put so much effort into trying to beat these divisional opponents. Maybe you have a let up. So again, I just don't see any of those teams winning 14 games. And in a era in which you only get one bye week, that could kind of water down what could potentially happen. But I mean, could we see 4 teams in this division? Is it even possible? Am I just, is it mathematically possible? Let's figure
Uh,
this out. So you get 4 division winners, correct? And then
yeah.
three.
Three wild card.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, technically, it
Yeah.
could. But I mean, we would have to really dive into the mathematics and the game situations. Like maybe it's virtually impossible based on the matchups that, 3 teams from the AFC West will be better than any other team. And look, I don't know if that's certainly possible. So let me ask you, which team misses the playoffs? I think right off the bat, I would, at first I would say, oh, probably Denver. Then I'm like, well, I mean, I'm not the biggest Russell Wilson fan, but even then, I still think Denver's a pretty solid bet for a playoff team. And I'm like, all right, maybe it's the Raiders. Well, I don't know. I mean, like, look, I mean, with all the things that were going on last year, they still went 10-7. And I
Right.
think they've gotten a lot better. I think their coaching situation is better. Nothing against Rich Bisaccia. I just think he was just put in an impossible position last season. I think just everything about their situation is better. I don't know. What team misses the playoffs, Braden? You willing
Oh,
to put your reputation on the line this early?
I I don't know why there's like it always feels like the Chargers are the one that like lets everyone down the most. So
Brandon
I'm almost
Staley, the
tempted
weak
to
link.
say like charging is gonna really commence more than one would expect when they kind of have made those moves. But I don't know. I think it's still the Raiders for me overall. I don't know. There's just I think that big of a gap in the quarterback play, and we know how much quarterbacks can kind of come in and change the landscape right away. Just looking at the last 2 Super Bowl winners, it's just different now in today's NFL how quickly they're kind of able to rally everyone around them. So and I don't mean that as kind of a slight to Derek Carr. I think he's probably top 12, 11 best quarterback in the league right now. But I think just how he's kind of handled himself in certain pressured situations, it's maybe going to be too much for him this time around. I'd say if that's a team I had to pick.
And look, I mean, this team again has 4 franchise quarterbacks, so we're not talking about slouches within the division. It's like, well, if you had a division of Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, uh, Aaron Rodgers, and Joe Montana, well, one of them's going to be the worst. You know what I mean? And pump your brakes, folks. I am in no way comparing that 4 to that, but I'm just saying, like, look, out of those 4, someone's got to be the worst. So, to your point, I do believe that, but I would also say that the weakest link in all these teams is the coaching. And to me, and again, part of that is I just don't. I have a big grudge against Brandon Staley. I just feel like he made so many decisions last year that directly cost the Chargers not only games, but in my opinion, the division. And I can't reconcile with that. Not yet. Not yet.
Right.
He's got to prove me otherwise. So I think at the end of the day, that's probably going to be um, the weakest link out of these teams. But right now it's exciting because you're looking at all these teams on paper and you're like, wow, I mean, this is going to be pay-per-view like viewing. I mean, I think every week there should be an AFC West game on prime time at least. It's got to be, right. It's going to be must watch TV there. So, all right, mostly we're here to talk about Davante Adams, but there has been obviously plenty of other stuff going on. We're still in the middle of the Deshaun Watson
Mm.
fiasco. Who knows what's going to happen with that? Right now, it looks like it's down to the Falcons and the Saints. There have been reports out there. Um, there's been people arguing about these reports, but There are reports that he is leaning towards the Falcons. And look, I mean, there's that connection with Arthur Blank there's that connection with Georgia and everything like that. So it makes sense. And, Atlanta, I mean, who knows? I mean, we'll see. We're kind of hoping we're going to know that by tonight so we could talk
Mhm.
about it officially. But that's obviously sitting there simmering on the surface. But outside of that, I mean, you have Baker Mayfield by virtue of this situation asking for a trade and getting, well, denied. Von Miller signing a 6-year, $120 million contract with the Buffalo Bills. Like, good God. Like, I mean, good for him. I mean, at
Right.
33 years old, signing a 6-year deal as a defensive lineman, hats off to you, my friend, because that's good, and you're going to a great team. So I'll
Mhm.
ask you, Braden, of these moves, and obviously I didn't mention a lot of them. Which one stuck out to you? Which was the most eye popping, and or which one do you think was the most uh, moving one in terms of power in the conference, in either conference or in the league in general?
Yeah, I think it's actually the Von Miller one, just because I think it was really interesting to kind of hear the reports on all the different places he was considering. It seemed like he was at first wanting to go back to Denver, and then Dallas was in the mix briefly there, and then it seemed like the Rams were making a really strong push to bring him back. And I think I saw kind of a funny quote today when he was introduced in Buffalo that the Rams he kind of felt like he was breaking up with a girlfriend that didn't necessarily treat him badly, but he just had to go out and find a new girlfriend. So I think just seeing the deal, like you mentioned, 6 years at his age, and seeing what Buffalo's really done the last few years to kind of build that pass rush and build that D line. Brandon Bean, I think is the last 3 years or maybe every year he's been the GM. He spent at least a first or second round pick on the D line. So that's always been an emphasis for him. And I think for a team like that, that's able to score so much points, and Von Miller at his age is still playing at a pretty high level. I think, maybe still near the best football of his career. So I think for a team like that, just not necessarily seeming like a natural fit, or anyone that was at the top of those sweepstakes, I think that's that one that's definitely surprised me.
Yeah, and and look, I mean, if you're Buffalo, kind of go, excuse me, going back to that discussion we were having about the AFC West and how it could really just beat the hell out of each other. Buffalo, I mean, arguably the best team in the conference, is sitting back there saying, "Hey, don't forget about us. We've gotten better." We talk about Kansas City. Like, I still think Kansas City is a great team. I just don't think they necessarily got better this offseason. And we go back to, our actual FPC NFL Sunday show when we were talking about, prior to the AFC Championship game, like, this was going to be Kansas City's best chance to snag another championship in
Right.
this early window because teams are just going to get better, particularly Buffalo. Now, I didn't imagine what we were about to see a couple months later during this free agency period, but the fact still remains these other teams got better, Buffalo included, and Kansas City, you better hope that they had enough separation between them and those other teams to be able to live off that this year. Because again, I mean, that's it's going to be a very, very, very competitive AFC this year that might just end up being a AFC for a team like the Bills, who, yeah, I mean, I think the Patriots are going to be a fairly tough team. I mean, I know people are jumping out of airplanes up here or in New England because of the non moves that are being made, but the reality of it is that division's not going to be as cutthroat as the AFC West. So
Mhm.
Buffalo can fine tune and compete. They know they can compete with the conference's best teams. They've done it. Get themselves ready for that big matchup in the end, and maybe by that point, Kansas City comes limping in because, well, maybe they finish the season with back-to-back games against the Chargers and say Denver, or the
Mm.
Chargers and the Raiders with the division on the line. Now all of a sudden you have to walk in and maybe you play a wild card game, maybe you win that one, but then you have to go to Buffalo.
Right.
And I'm telling you, that's not going to be a good situation for any team, let alone one that just had to go through the gauntlet of the AFC West. So, Allen Robinson in Los Angeles. That was a
Mm.
little. I don't know if it was surprising because again, his market had been relatively quiet while everything else was kind of bouncing all over the place. But he ends up signing a pretty nice deal with the Los Angeles Rams. Now, what does this mean for Odell Beckham Jr.? Maybe, I mean, look, he's not going to be ready until middle of the season. He wants to go back to LA. I still think he ultimately ends up going back because he could, again, I mean, who knows, but maybe another team comes back and say, hey, we're desperate for a receiver. We just traded Davante Adams and we have a pretty upset quarterback here, who only has, I don't know, what, Randall Cobb to throw to. I mean, is that
Yeah.
who their number one receiver is right now? So
Yeah, Alan Lazard. I don't know how much
yeah, Alan
you put in
Lazard.
it,
But
but
you know what I'm saying. I mean, we've
yeah,
heard Packers fans for years talk about how bad they are when they lose. So um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd be curious to see. I mean, Odell Beckham Jr. I think really, played a huge role for this Rams team down the stretch. But you have Allen Robinson in there, and maybe he takes that role because you also have to remember Robert Woods is coming back, or you
yeah.
would assume he'd be coming back.
Yeah, and Van Jefferson, I know showed a lot of growth this year. So yeah, it almost makes me wonder: is the Rams maybe going to move off somebody? I don't think that's the case, but I know that's kind of been speculated out there a little bit, especially on Robert Woods. So yeah, with Robinson, the joke's kind of always been he's never had a good enough quarterback, but now he's got Matthew Stafford, and for a guy that never really had much other than Calvin Johnson or Galladay or Marvin Jones for a little while, he's now probably got the best receiving core arguably in the league or one of the few best. So I think with Allen Robinson, it's probably a pretty good schematic fit for him. I know for the Chiefs, it was kind of mixed reviews as far as fans that I saw talking about if they wanted to see Robinson in Kansas City. I think it's probably a better scheme fit for him in LA than say somewhere like that, where I think he gets a little bit more downfield opportunities one-on-one. Doesn't have to really worry about the RPO and intermediate game quite as much. So I think it's a great scheme fit for him, and like you said, a pretty good payday for him for what I was kind of expecting, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the thing. I mean, I know Patriots fans were eager to sign every wide receiver, but some of these guys were getting some big money, and you know what? Other teams value where they spend their money a little bit differently, and some teams are willing to spend the price on that. So yeah, I mean, it would be interesting to see if he does kind of get back to that, what was it, 2020 year. I think he had over 1,300 yards or close to it. I mean, he had a big season when, well, obviously not last year. So but yeah, I mean, I'd be remiss though if I did not bring up, so the last time we talked, Braden, the last time we talked, I begrudgingly admitted that either one of two things were true: either Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes were the best quarterback in the league. Well, I am a
Oop, looks like he popped
new.
out. Oh, there he is.
Oh, here I am. Here I am. They wanted to mute me, Braden. I was going to start talking about Tom Brady, and the folks just wanted to mute me. No, obviously, the last time we were on the air, I mean, honestly, it feels like years ago now that Tom Brady announced his return, but the reality of it is it was just a few days ago, Sunday. And I think hopefully we have Braden here. I don't know if maybe I lost him now. Maybe I lost connection here again. But
Oh,
oh, are we there? Okay, there we go. I
yeah,
think he froze for a second. I couldn't tell. Could you hear me? Was I
yeah,
talking? Okay.
yep.
This is what we deal with, folks. It's live television. We're dealing with internet connections. You gotta deal with the cards you're dealt here. But no, look, I mean, the return of Tom Brady on the cusp of the start of the legal tampering period obviously changed the landscape drastically. You're talking about a Tampa Bay team, and I live down here in Tampa. I'm not a Bucks fan per se. I'm a fan of Tom Brady, so I do follow him fairly closely. The fans down here just 5 days ago were, kind of sadly debating Kyle Trask versus Blaine Gabbert. There was some pipe dream type stuff going on about Deshaun Watson and everything like that. And, kind of just accepting that, well, Leonard Fournette's probably gone and Carlton Davis is going to move on and yada, yada, yada. Well, then all of a sudden Tom Brady decides, well, you know what? 41 days of retirement is enough. I'm going to come back. I'm going to play a 23rd season. And Ryan Jensen resigns. They re-signed, and this is one of the moves that I wanted to bring up. They re-signed Chris Godwin. He did
Mhm.
not, obviously is not going to play on the franchise tag for a second time. They have brought back Carlton Davis, which a lot of folks thought that, well, he's probably going to be gone. He's a nice cornerback. He's going to get a nice payday. And again, many assume that the Rob Gronkowski return is just a matter of time. But the two things that, or one thing I like that they did, and one thing I'm anticipating they're going to do to add to this team, the first thing is I love the signing of Russell Gage for this team. I
Yeah.
thought he had a really nice season for the Atlanta Falcons, and now all of a sudden you're coming in to play, the third receiver role, and I put that up. When you're on the Tom Brady offense, there's no such thing as a number 3 receiver. There's just a general understanding that, yeah, Mike Evans is your guy and Chris Godwin and then Russell Gage. Well, Russell Gage could be a number 1 or number 2 on some teams. And hell, he was a number 1 receiver on the Falcons last year once Calvin Ridley went down. So I love that move, and a move that I talking myself more into and convincing myself is going to happen. It's Tyrann Mathieu. And we talked actually about this off the air, just messaging back and forth. I thought, you know what? That just seems like it just makes so much sense. His history with Bruce Arians. There was a picture, I guess, someone posted. He was at Disney World with Todd Bowles' son. So I don't know. Connect the dots, folks. It makes sense. They lost Jordan Whitehead to free agency. This is a team, Tampa, that unlike teams in the AFC, I mean, we're talking about an NFC that I mean, 6 hours ago, I would have probably put Green Bay in there. But right now, I don't know. If Green Bay goes into next season as they are, now, obviously, that's not going to happen because we have the draft and everything. But, like, if there's only a marginal improvement from what they are right now, I don't know if I'd put them at the tier 1 level of NFL teams right now or NFC teams right now. So, Tampa all of a sudden went from, looking looking like they were going to go back to the previous, 45 years of their existence. And now all of a sudden they might be right there with the Rams when it comes to the top contender in this division or in this conference. And I'll tell you what, they go out and get Tyrann Mathieu. You know better than anyone. Not only does he bring that value on the field, but what can he do? I mean, this started out as kind of a rhetorical question, but I'm actually going to ask you, what can he do to this team just in general outside of just production on the field?
Yeah, sorry for that delay. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just he's kind of the defense's quarterback a little bit. I think he's able to just kind of take care of everyone's role, so to speak. I think anything, athletic wise, I don't necessarily think it's going to be elite like speed or anything like that. But I think just his instincts is probably second to none. I think among most defensive backs in the league, and I think he's always just kind of one of those guys that seems to get like hot and is able to produce kind of at his highest in a small portion, so to speak. So I think when you kind of mentioned that the other day, yeah, that wasn't necessarily anything that I was thinking of at first, but we see kind of where these other safeties have gone, and it makes a lot more sense. And especially with the Bruce Arians part, I think just what he kind of meant to Tyrann entering the league, a little bit of drop off in his stock in the draft with everything that kind of ended there at LSU. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think just how much he's kind of waited to sign here. It's seeming more and more likely now because he's arguably, I think, probably the best safety left out there looking at what's still on the board.
Yeah, and again, I can't imagine he's gonna. To me, I don't think, like, obviously payday matters, but I think he wants to win. I think he's just a guy that just would not know how to handle or once he's gotten a taste of winning, like once he left the Texans, once he left these, like, you don't want to go back to that. I don't think he sees himself as doing that. So he looks at Tampa and it's like, well, guess what? You go to Tampa, you got a pretty darn good shot of going back to the Super Bowl, and I'm pretty sure he will enjoy that. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We're going to obviously be popping in and out throughout, whenever this breaking news stuff happens. I'm sure Deshaun Watson Watch is still on for now, this is probably going to break, 20 minutes after we get off the air, and we're going to drag our asses back here. But if it doesn't, be prepared. We're going to do that. We're going to be here. Also, check out Full Press NFL on Twitter, because we have a lot of great stuff there, a lot of great graphics, a lot of great information, a lot of great articles, draft profiles. And of course, don't forget about the NFL draft, folks. That is just, I don't know what, 5 weeks, six weeks away, end of April. So beginning of May. So we're getting there, folks. We're going to be there. Once this rush is over, we're going to shift our focus to that. So check that out. And I know I'm doing a lot of promoing here. Monday, join us live right on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/full press coverage, for our NHL trade deadline live show starting at noon, where we're going to be just breaking down everything that happens on the NHL trade deadline. So check that out. We're going to have a lot of fun, a lot of guests, a lot of great conversation. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a great night. Have a great evening. And we will